40 years ago, we went to a manager, is that when it went to a 5-member board in Camden? Or was it?
I didn't see what you did, and I know, I see that there was a 1934 charter, but I don't have a copy of it. I don't know what was there before.
Because originally it was a 3-person select board, I think when it was originally set up.
Here.
Here, and then I don't know when it changed to 5. I know the town manager, I remember I was alive when that happened, so there.
Long ago?
Yeah, that long ago.
All right, so just touching base on the forms of back again, the forms of government you could choose and put into your charter. The first is just a town meeting with selectmen or select board members running it. And for those in the audio audience, the word selectmen is throughout all the statutes, except for the fact that the governor has just said it has to be gender neutral. And so we'll pass that one by. The next one in format is pretty much what you have, which is a town meeting with a professional town manager form of government. And I'll go through that statute in a second that defines what that means. I won't spend a lot of time on this because you see it in operation every day and you know it very well.
Except even select board run towns have town meetings.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. The select board members have no legislative authority. They are considered the executive body of the town. So they are responsible for the administration of the town, entering into contracts and managing and basically administering to the town, as the town manager does, because there's no one else to do it. And then all the legislative acts, and most particularly the budget, are adopted at the town meeting. So the next format, this would be what we might call the third format, possible format, is something you might consider, although it's going to be a bit of a sea change if you did do this, would be to put Camden in some middle ground between a council form of government and a professional manager, Belfast, Rockland, into this middle ground where you have a town meeting, you have council members, and you have also a town manager. And the way that works is, it's on this premise. You know, things have gotten complicated, and the select board can't keep up. And what we need to do is transition to having the select board become basically a representative form of government. They would be the legislative body. We're going to call them a council, town council, city council, whatever. And we're going to have them be the legislative body to adopt ordinances, and whether they're zoning ordinances or police power ordinances, like noise ordinances or trash ordinances or dogs in the park ordinances or whatever. We're going to have those 7 people be a council, and we think that makes more sense because those 7 people will know far more than the typical member of the public in these complicated issues that we're going to put out to the vote, and we're going to hold them accountable. So the political process will go back and forth between these, let's call them 7 council members and the voters who elect those 7 people. And we're going to hold those people accountable, and they're going to create policy, and they're going to enact policy, except for 1 or 2 major things. They are not going to adopt the budget. We're going to have a town meeting to do the budget. So similar to what you have here, except you have secret ballot day for ordinances and adoption of all kinds of things, deeds and easements and acquisitions of property and things that we've done over the years. You do that at the special town meeting with the secret ballot, and then you have basically the financial meeting, which is the floor vote. So that is a possibility, and I'm going to put on the website a PDF of 1 or 2 of those sort of hybrid formats. And which one did I print out? I did Herman. Charter for the town of Herman, which has some of those different features in it. So that's a hybrid. And
Holden is the same thing. Holden does it too. Holden does it as well.
I'm not recommending anything. I'm just saying these are possibilities.
I was just going to say is, by being the select board, you're within the community. You don't have the Democrat, Republican. Councils tend to become
Political.
very political. And they also, I've seen way too much garbage with council meetings, that I call it, which is
any-
unfortunate.
Any city in particular?
No, I'm not going there. And the other thing is that, like you read about Portland, they do a lot of things by council, and if the people of the neighborhood don't agree with what the council did, it's such a cumbersome deal to get it brought back to a people vote till it can be decided. A lot of times these parks they've been doing is one issue that we see a lot. And I've never been, I mean, I agree, over all the years I've been on there, I'd love to have been able to do a few things without going through the hoops, but the hoops is what makes it special, and I would never change it.
Portland has wards too, doesn't it? I think, which adds another level. Yeah.
Right, and Belfast does as well. Now,
Oh, do they?
Belfast is 6,800 people, not a ton bigger than Camden.
Rockland doesn't have wards, so.
But one of the things that Wards does is, it's a citywide election for each person, but they have to come from a particular ward. They have to reside there. So you have this contact at a more local level in terms of who's representing the ward. So it's political in the sense that you have to, and you could or could not do that here. This is all theoretical,
Right.
I don't have a vote, I think you all will decide these things, but just to flesh it out, that works fairly well, for example, in Belfast, and you're even, what are we, about 5,200?
4,800.
48 now?
Yeah.
We dropped?
Yeah.
In the last
It's over
census, that was
5,000.
what it was in the last census.
Yeah, and unlike, maybe this is unique, but Belfast has not been political. I've been there for 30 years, and I've represented the council since 1990.
Okay.
And it has had its issues with personalities, but so does every select board. But, so there's the counter argument, or at least the counter example, would be an entity that can move very quickly and can respond to various pressures and things in a way. And that is the trade-off when you go to elect representative form of government. It is far more efficient in terms of getting hearings set up, getting people in, hearing what they have to say, and then a vote relatively quickly thereafter. I'm not recommending it. I'm not recommending anything, but I can say that in terms of efficiency of getting things done, absolutely that has been a benefit for people coming to town in Belfast who are seeking to figure out if they're going to be able to fit in or they need things changed. And it's a tool that's been used quite a bit in that city to be really nimble when it comes to making decisions, particularly when it's a bit of a business orientation or it can be infrastructure changes as well. And the downside, of course, is they also, unlike what we're talking about here with the town meeting, still retaining the town meeting for budget, Belfast, the budget is passed by the council. So it's-
And what would it take to pull some of the floor votes out of town meeting and putting it to a vote at the public safety? Because there are a lot of times people say that only 100 people or less show up at town meeting and making decisions, and, pardon?
Or less.
Or less, well, I'm being kind.
Generous.
And so, what would, I mean, this, some towns, I know Waldeboro did it a few years ago, and that became an issue back and forth for a while. But what would it take on some of these referendum questions to be able to put it on a
Paper ballot.
secret ballot versus a few people deciding it?
You can, there's no, as long as you follow the way the format is, you can't put budget items in a town meeting in a secret ballot.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Not budget.
Not
But
the
almost
budget.
anything else you can.
Oh, is that state
Is that up
statute?
to the
Yes.
select board?
Okay, all right.
Wait a
It's
minute,
up to the select board to decide what
they
goes on
put
the
school
secret ballot.
budgets, that's financial, that's on the secret ballot.
But that's a school association, it's a school
That's still
board.
part of the town.
No.
Not anymore.
They're separate
anymore.
administrative
That's in
units.
64.
All right,
Plus they have it's just really this confirmation vote,
Right.
which is some kind of very strange hybrid.
yeah.
But that's also by state statute, how that's run too. But,
Yeah, and personally, I'm not a big fan, I am a big fan of having the financial part be a give and take dialogue as a floor vote, where you can actually debate it. But some of these decisions in terms of what's on the secret ballot is just by practice. We could put more, And just,
I'm just asking more than anything right now. 'cause
But the current charter has no specific language, is my understanding, as to what goes where. That there's nothing in that charter that says, it's silent on that issue. Is that correct or not?
I think there's an expectation that the budget is going to a floor vote, but I'd have to reread.
No, that is not what that's not what I'm saying.
It
I'm
would be
talking
one.
about the other issues, the warrants that we have. And we have some things that go on the secret ballot and some things that are voted on at the annual meeting. And I understand the concept that the budget must go to the annual meeting. It's the warrants that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm not thinking of anything else in the charter. I agree with you. I don't think there's anything else in the charter that requires one form of vote or another.
So there's no actual language to say the select board has to put all of X kind of things in there, or there's no language even that says that they can have option to do whatever they want. It's just silent on that.
Right. You could put, there's some charters I read today that get into such specificity of certain things. I mean, if you put it in the charter, it's going to have to be followed. And it's not like an ordinance that can be amended tomorrow. You can't amend it until you go through the process by statute. Yes, so I agree with you that there's flexibility here, and that if you wanted to load things up more for the secret ballot, we have much greater attendance, you could do that except for the financial issues and electing the moderator. Yeah,
But then if it's voted on or in a referendum, let's say, then if people want to re-vote it at some point to repeal it, it's also supposed to then appear in the referendum.
that would be by secret ballot, yes.
Yeah.
Although,
Those are statutory requirements, that's
If
true.
it's dealing with the same issue. It can't be then, it's not supposed to then be brought to town meeting or something to be
Well-
voted out.
Right, the citizens initiative mechanism is in the same part of the statute that deals with the secret ballot, and it's all under that process. That's how you get to it. So the secret ballot is part of that, yes.
It doesn't say anything in the charter that I recall about citizen initiative items, and that's because that's all governed by
State
state law.
statute.
yeah, there is.
There is some, but by charter, I mean, there's some limitations as well. Since you brought it up, I'll mention two of them. So one limitation is you cannot amend a zoning ordinance by citizens petition. Why is that? It's because there's a part of the statute that says, and this section of the statute shall not be changed by your local ordinance or charter. And this is one of these areas of preemption where the state has said that we think the process of creating zoning and going through that process is so important, you must follow this process. It must go through what's called the municipal reviewing authority, which is typically the planning board, and is by definition, by statute, the planning board. And you've got to have public hearings by the planning board, and it has to be consistent with the charter by statute, all the zoning changes. None of that occurs when somebody does a citizen's petition, because there's no hearing, there's no discussion, there's no connectivity to make sure it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So there's an instance where you just can't have one like that when it's a zoning question. The other thing that is sometimes awkward, and we've done this in Camden 12 years ago, maybe more, 15, I forget. There are times when there is a request by a citizen's initiative for an issue to be placed on the ballot, and the select board has refused to do that. And believe it or not, that can happen, and it can happen because the statute says it can happen, and it seems to be inconsistent with the way the charter is worded.
But I
However-
understood that when that happened, that was about 15 years ago, that there were competing articles, and also we were pretty close to a town meeting, if I recall, that if we were within so many days of a already scheduled town meeting, we could go to that, correct?
But the point is, the way the statute is worded, it's really awkwardly worded, but it's the statute's wording that says, in the event that a select board unreasonably refuses to place an item on the ballot, such as a citizen's initiative, then in that event, those folks who have the citizen's initiative can ask a notary public to call a town meeting,
Right.
which is a really awkward thing, because nobody ever does something like that, and it's just awkward. The point is, getting back to your point, what's unreasonable? And what you just described was some reasonable, what we thought back then were reasons why it shouldn't go on the same ballot. And then what happened was it followed in November, a few months later. There were no competing issues on the ballot, and then those referendum issues.
Where's the language in here that where's the language that covers the petitions in here?
There's language that talks about if someone brings forward a petition, it must be put on the ballot, and
Is that by law, or is it in this charter?
Well, it spells out how many citizens, how many signatures you need, and then how many days you're gonna present it to the board.
there is,
And then it
but
has to be verified, and then how many days the board has to put a special town meeting on, correct?
yes, well, it has to happen.
Line.
A town meeting or a referendum, depending on which was requested by the citizens.
Right, but if you have so many days to,
There are timeframes as to whether or not you put it, I'd have to have it, but it's supposed to be within X days, and if not, strike that. You're supposed to go on the next annual town meeting warrant, or within 60 days, or something like that.
Exactly. That's what it was.
Under general
60 days.
provisions, initiative and referendum,
Which page?
page 31, about,
Hang on a sec.
it would be.
We're on
initiative.
page 9.
Page 9,
I don't know why, but when I took this off the website, I've got these
petition for
highlighted.
articles in the warrant.
Noticed that
9.
too.
Are they still in, or are they out?
And those are all in.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why they're showing up as highlighted, though.
So, Steve, I think you were looking at page 9, sections, as Deb just whispered into my ear, section 15.
Okay,
So here's and we'll dig into this, but we're sort of in the weeds, so we might as well talk about it for a second. Any qualified, for those listening, it says, any qualified voter may request the select board that an article be placed in the warrant and shall present in written form the substance of the article. If the request is denied by the board on the written petition of a number of voters equal to or at least 10% of the number of votes cast in the town at the last gubernatorial election, the select board shall insert that particular article in the next warrant issued, or shall call a special town meeting for its consideration. So the way this article is worded is, people are going to come forward, not having done the whole citizen petition thing, but saying, hey, would you put this article in the warrant? And then if the select board says, no, thank you, we're not going to, then folks can go out and get a petition together. And if you read this literally, it sounds like the select board has to put it on the warrant.
And that's what the Maine Municipal Association says, because I contacted them once years ago about such a thing, and they said, yes, it should go on the ballot.
Right.
But
And we had,
also in Kennebunk, wasn't it Kennebunkport recently, where the citizens put together a petition and they refused to put it on the ballot? And it was quite a big deal.
Right.
And the citizens got a lawyer to, and eventually got it on the ballot.
and I think that is, that was not my opinion back then in terms of how to interpret this, and nor was it in terms of the folks I spoke to at MMA, because the statute, we felt, trumped this language by preemption because of the right the select board had by statute to reject things that they deemed unreasonable. But the point is, I think that this could be clarified in terms of what you do or do not expect in the future. And this is the place to do it.
A couple of extra sentences that explains it a little bit better, or
So do
helpful.
Sorry. As we're looking at this, so you're saying what this one example, but a bunch of them, state statute says this, and we're going to come in here and say, we don't like the way this is. I mean, are we comparing every article against state statute, or is there something that says in here, this is the way state statute is, you have to do it this way? So that we're not wasting a lot of time looking at something and saying, we don't like that, but that's the way state statute is.
I think that's part of the job here, is to be aware,
Right.
because unfortunately, there's this, I was thinking about how to describe this today. There are these statutes which are they cover a tremendous amount of topics and territory, and they funnel down to your charter, which is only going to be talking about this much stuff. And the charter must be consistent with all that law above, and it's just assumed that there's an awareness of it when you adopt this, and it's not inconsistent with it. Because if we went and gave a historical explanation of every part that you're adopting and all the statutes that apply, you'd have a book. So it's a tough one. I get the idea. And frankly, some of the charters are written in very narrative form, but they get very long. And when you read one where there's a lot of explanation and flowery stuff in there, and then you read one that's right to the point, I sort of like the ones that are right to the point more, because they just get us to what can and cannot be done. So that's a sort of a counter, I guess, thought to too much historical explanation.
But we
You
would
could have
be-
footnotes, sorry, you could have footnotes and reference the statutes.
And this does, actually, in many cases, right before you get it, it gives you the
Right, and these are the
state
old
law
ones.
reference, except it's 30, not 30A, and a lot of the numbers have changed.
I'm just envisioning that we could waste an awful lot of time
Right.
going through wordsmithing something and then find out that somewhere over here by state statute it says no.
And I don't have a good answer for you other than somehow trying to be me, meaning me, being aware of the topics you're thinking about, because I will most likely know what you're doing that's contrary. I won't know everything, but I know a lot of it, of the law.
But we wouldn't be able to add something to this section that said something like, unless the select board decides it's unreasonable. I mean, that would be in violation of state statute, which says that if you put together a citizen's petition that meets certain qualifications, then it goes on the ballot. So we don't want to put in here language that it would allow a select board to decide what they did or did not want to have on a ballot, because that completely can create a situation where it completely defeats the point of a citizen's petition in the state of Maine, which is if citizens disagree with the select board, they can put something on the ballot. So we wouldn't want to, define this further than what's right here. This probably agrees with state law. That's why,
Well, as we said, there is some, didn't you say? that
Yeah,
there was a little
I think that I have to disagree with you on some of what you just said in terms of the law. But I think what we need to do is wrestle with it in detail when we get there.
Right.
But let's take an example. You got enough people together, and they decided they wanted to have a petition that said that you were going to paint the town office purple. And there were enough people who signed that. And the select board is going to say, that's unreasonable, we're not putting that on the ballot. And you would say, you have enough people who sign this, you must put it on the ballot. Or we could go to other extremes in terms of we're going to discriminate against people, or something silly. I don't have a good example off the top of my head. But I believe that's why the safety net is in the statute, where the select board can say no, because something silly can happen. I think your examples are all, you're assuming they're rational.
yes.
When
So
you,
which statute is that? This one, section 2053, is the one it refers to?
out of date.
Title 30A, Section 2521, I believe would be the one you'd want to look at.
30A, 2521?
That's off the top of my head, but I believe that's correct.
All of these references are out of date.
there's no requirement
Yes, we
when
are.
there's a petition for a referendum for the language in that referendum to be gone over by an attorney to word it. I mean, as I've seen a lot of things that are petitioned are loosely worded or contradictory in nature sometimes. And to put that before the public is, in the legislature, when a legislator wants to get something before the legislature, he goes and they process it through an attorney who takes his idea and wordsmiths it, and then that's what goes to the legislature. So, there's, at this low level, which we are, no one has that system set up. And,
Well, I'll tell you how we handle it, frankly. And yes, that was perhaps a better example. There have been warrant articles that I have recommended not proceed because the way they were drafted, they were either going to be unlawful or definitionally tremendously problematic. And so that would be a situation where the select board said, no, we're not putting it forward. The other answer, or part of the answer to your question is, a lot of times, even though this is somewhat dangerous territory, but as a part of the service to the public is, I might look at something before the petition is submitted and say, you guys need to go rework this, because it's going to get to the point where I have to say I can't recommend it going forward, because you've got all these problems here, and it just will make a terrible law, or it's in contradiction to something else. That's informal, that's not written down anywhere, but it's just as a matter of trying to not let something silly happen without some comment and some direction. Even though I'm not giving him legal advice, I'm just trying to tell him what my advice will be later on. So go get some help and fix this first. That's practically how it's done, even though it's not written anywhere, and it never.
Well, I remember one time that we had a petition, and if both of them had gone, they both could have passed. And it would have happened in Lincolnville, I think, one year. There was, I can't remember what it was, but they had a yes and a no, and they both passed. And so they
Nullified each other.
nullified each other.
Chaos isn't good.
on page 32, general provisions, and in section 1, second paragraph there, and it seems like that it's governed by, or described at least, in Title 21, Section 1351, the revised statutes. Is that, would there be something in that particular section of the law that speaks to the issue we're talking about?
Which one are you looking at?
I do not know. Title 21 is the state statute relating to elections, which is referenced frequently and incorporated into the municipal elections in various places. But this is talking about the details of procedure. I don't think that's going to be helpful, but I can't tell you what Section 1351
Okay, all
says off the
right.
top of my
I
head.
was just wondering how that impacted on our discussion.
Can we go back a little bit? We're kind of getting into the weeds
Yep.
about something before I think we've gotten through some of Bill's stuff.
Right, so, and fair enough, and thank you. That's the trouble with this stuff. You get
I know,
weedy
it's too
very quickly.
easy, too easy.
And it's somebody wants to put their teeth into it right away, and I get that. So I suckered myself into that discussion, so sorry. So, town manager plan, why don't we just talk about that for a second? Because this is at least something hard and fast, and I don't think we're going to deviate from it. I'd be surprised if you are going to recommend not following the town manager plan after you go through your deliberations. So, just for those who want to look it up, and we'll put it in a PDF as well. It's Title 30A, it's Section 2631, it's called the Town Manager Plan. And it requires that there be a town manager. It requires that the selectmen shall choose the town manager on the basis of executive and administrative qualifications with special reference to actual experience in or knowledge of the duties of office under this subchapter. I don't know who wrote that, but that is absolutely true. Audra, I bet you would agree that there's one thing to read about it and there's another thing to do it and learn from experience. There's no book to be a town manager. It is like the deep end of the water very quickly. Yeah? No?
It's worse being a city manager, that helps.
The statute says the town manager need not be a resident, but may be required to reside if the select board so decided. Town manager may not serve as a moderator, selectman, assessor, or member of the school committee. I'm doubting you want to put those things in the charter. The select board, again, it doesn't read that way, it says select men, may remove or suspend the town manager. That is one of the roles that's unique for the select board in terms of suspension of anyone. That's one of the few things where you review a person, the select board reviews people directly in terms of whether, the town manager directly. And it's a weird process because, won't get into detail, but it involves filing information with the clerk publicly before that process even goes forward. It's a strange one. And person.
That's by statute.
Yes, I'm reading the statute now. So then there's this section, and this is part that's in you have a reference to this in the charter as well, right in the town manager section. But it's sort of interesting. It is the intention of this subchapter that the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, as a body, shall exercise all administrative and executive powers of the town, except as provided in this subchapter. The Board of Selectmen shall deal with the administrative services solely through the town manager and shall not give orders to any subordinates of the manager, either publicly or privately. I'll stop there. This is a key feature of the town manager form of government, which is in your charter, but it is a hard line. The select board in the charter cannot do this, is not supposed to become involved with micromanaging or even managing any employee or department head. That is not the select board's, that's just simply not the authority of the select board. That is solely the responsibility of the town manager. And sometimes in towns, elected officials want to get right down into it and go talk to employees who are on the job, on the street, digging something up and telling them what to do, and that should not happen. That's just an example.
Saying that in our select board section.
Yes, it does.
Okay, we say it in our select board section.
That's in the town manager section. So here's powers and duties of the town manager. Town manager is the chief, again, should remain in the charter, is the chief executive and administrative official. The town manager is responsible to the select board for the administration of all departments and offices. The town manager is to execute all laws and ordinances. The town manager may serve as a department head under the control of the selectmen when directed by the selectmen. We have not done that. I don't know if.
Well, she's the director of the wastewater, or you are the,
On the
Executive.
chief executive officer of the
Right.
wastewater.
so that'd be an example of being the department head.
And you may or may not want to continue that, that's up to you. So here's important, unless otherwise provided by town ordinance, the town manager shall appoint, supervise, and control all town officials whom the municipal officers are required to appoint, except members of boards, commissions, committees, the assessors, and as you know by the Camden Charter, police chief, fire chief, me,
I think that's it.
It's
are appointed by the
wastewater commissioner, yeah, wastewater, and,
select board.
Well, no, wastewater's me.
that's you? Thought it was hired by the,
You confirm them.
remember that one?
Yep.
Police chief.
But the other thing is, though, once they're hired,
Nope.
even though they're hired by the select board, they fall under the personnel policy that with the town manager managing from there on.
I can't fire them.
You can't, right, but you
Can't
have,
hire or fire police, fire.
right, but they fall under your, once they're hired.
They are employees, and they are subject to the personnel code unless there happens to be, it would be unusual, a contract that exempted an employee from the code. That does happen sometimes. Anyway, so continuing on,
Who makes the budget decisions? The select board or the town manager? Who controls the budget of the town?
Budget
town
committee
meeting,
makes who are elected,
Right,
make a recommendation, and the select board makes a recommendation with their own review, and then the town meeting decides which
And then
one they like, or
who's responsible for carrying that out? Is that
Budget-
the town
budget
manager?
committee.
They're not carrying it out.
Following the budget.
The finance director and the town manager.
Right.
There is a responsibility of the town manager related to organizing the budget as well. I mean, the town manager gives significant input to the budget committee and to the select board, so, and that follows, you sort of.
Well, one of the warrant articles actually says that you're going to move 10% after the end of the year to balance out, but still stay within the approved budget, the total approved budget, that was approved at town meeting, right?
Right, there is, I believe the statutory guidelines of how much you can switch out of any one line item or category into another. I think it's 5%, maybe 10%.
So did we stay, did it, when the whole snowball issue happened, had we moved out of the territory that we're required to operate in regarding moving budget figures around?
No, that was a town meeting vote at the town meeting to budget that money to pay that debt at that time.
But before that, before there was the debt,
I'm not following.
money, well, I thought that then money had been moved from some accounts temporarily to others or
Never
something.
have. Never have.
No idea what happened during that period. All right, so back to where the town manager is going to, the point is, except for those three officers, the town manager appoints all of the department heads, subject to confirmation by the select board for the department heads. Non-department heads, the town manager would hire directly. And then typically, I assume you do this here, you just report that you've hired. Yeah. So the town manager is supposed to control all subordinates, assistants, except the town manager may delegate this authority to a department head. Purchasing agent, town manager is the purchasing agent, and the town manager shall attend all meetings of the Board of Selectmen, and the town manager may attend meetings when the manager's removal is being considered. Good to know. You can make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen for more efficient operation of the town. The town manager shall attend all meetings and hearings. Keeps the Board of Selectmen and the residents informed as to the town's financial condition. Shall collect data necessary to prepare the budget. Shall assist residents, taxpayers in discovering their lawful remedies in cases involving complaints of unfair vendor, administrative, and governmental practices. And then, as the town manager has exclusive authority to remove for cause after notice and hearing all persons whom the manager is authorized to appoint, and report all removals to the select board. And those are internal personnel decisions that you might have. So that's the town manager plan, and those are the responsibilities that are solely the town manager.
Could you go back, was there one where you said that the town manager shall attend all public hearings and meetings?
Yes, that's what it says. I don't think they really mean planning board and zoning board of appeals. I think they
Right.
mean of the select board.
Like, Deb remembers this well. Remember when we had that deal with the Mill Street and the,
Oh, yeah.
and we had the police chief and you got involved and the town manager was involved?
Yep.
Did that fall into that, what you just read there? Remember when we had to do all that?
Which one was it?
The lady was the lawyer that got broke into
Oh.
and that whole thing?
The lady on
Okay.
Mill Street?
Yes, that went to federal court, and what I had suggested the select board do is authorize me to conduct an investigation because the town manager and the police chief were both accused of bad behavior. So it was clear that there needed to be another, as there was a conflict of interest, there needed to be another avenue of investigation. And that was a section under the charter, as well as the town manager plan, that I thought that was something you could do.
I think it's the assistance of our possible residents and taxpayers in discovering their lawful remedies in cases involving complaints or unfair vendor, administrative, and governmental practices. So that's the
What page
part
is
of,
that on, Deb?
that's ours, page 12.
But also, if I
That's-
recall, you were involved too because of the police stuff too. It was considered private information, wasn't that the other thing too?
A lot going on there, yeah.
Yes, there
remember.
was.
But actually, the operative section would also be in the town manager plan where, I don't know if that I read this earlier. The section does not prevent the Board of Selectmen from appointing committees or commissions of its own members or of citizens to conduct investigations into the conduct of any official or department.
So that's where your investigation powers came from.
I thought it was broad enough. And it worked out. The judge said that, contrary to the complaint, I had done an impartial job.
I have a observation. If I heard that correctly, you said the town, whatever your title is,
Manager.
town manager shall attend all meetings of. Does that mean we have been in violation of some kind of thing when she takes off and goes on vacation?
No, when.
Or are we conducting an illegal meeting
No,
because she's not there?
no, I think two things happen. One, we have to be somewhat reasonable in
Yeah.
applying the law. And the second is when the town manager goes on vacation by charter, she appoints someone to act in her stead. And you might have heard me earlier talking about or her designee.
Okay.
That is who that is when that occurs.
Does our, this may be too into the weeds, does our charter specify how that designation happens?
It does, well, yeah, it talks about it.
Order of progression?
Didn't memorize it, but I believe it's,
I appoint them and then it's confirmed by the select board.
and it has been at times the police chief, it has been at times
Jody did it.
Director.
Jody did it.
Christine
Jody,
Savage.
and prior to that,
Remember Christine was
Oh,
for a
yes.
while?
We
We
are
had
back
a-
in the weeds
she
now.
was in it, I know. Showing my age.
didn't Janice do it once, too?
No, it's always been the police chief, and then the last time was Jody, wasn't it?
I think
Right.
Carol Sue used to do it before Randy.
I don't remember, well, maybe,
Legend-
maybe,
Legend has it.
yeah.
Oh, I thought
Yeah,
Phil
you're right.
did it before Randy. was
Yeah, Phil
chief.
did
Phil
it.
did it a
It's
lot.
been the police chief for quite a few times.
So it's
Layers and
Phil
layers.
with a gun.
But it is in there somewhere.
Yeah, I just,
Jody
how it's
was pointed-
designated was,
Yep.
So, yeah,
it's
okay.
coming from Audra.
Yeah, right, it doesn't actually say it must be,
It's not like the select board steps into it and makes a decision.
no. So I've talked probably longer than y'all wanted me to, and then, let's see if I missed my things that I was supposed to talk about here. To start with, I find my agenda again.
Role of the town charter, different forms of government, discussion and questions.
I think we've had all that.
I did have a question, and early, we were talking about, there needs to be a letter of opinion that says the town charter does not conflict with the Constitution or state statutes.
Yes.
Does it say who is supposed to write that letter of opinion? Is it somebody the Charter Commission appoints or hires, or is it the state that has to do that? Who writes the letter of opinion?
Within 12 months after its election, the Charter Commission shall submit its final report to the municipal officers. This report must include full text and an explanation of the new charter or revisions, comments that the commission considers desirable, an indication of the major differences between the current and proposed charters, and 4, a written opinion by an attorney admitted to the bar of this state that the proposed charter or charter revision does not contain any provision prohibited by the U.S. or Maine constitutions or the general laws.
So it sounds like it's
You
charter
can-
choice.
You can do it though, right?
Bill could do that.
I think I can. For some strange reason, I thought it might have to be an independent attorney when I first thought about
Because
this,
it might be a conflict.
because I'm working with you all.
Right,
And you're, okay.
right.
I know we did that in Belfast. We used a separate opinion at the end as fresh eyes as well.
And I have a
always good,
question
actually.
about that. Is there's nowhere in the charter, is there, that calls out the responsibilities of a town attorney?
There's subsection D.
Where's that? What page is that?
It's under it's page 20.
20, okay, great.
It's at all specific. It's just the person who's going to deal with pretty much everything that comes down the pike that's legal.
Right.
And then you can appoint somebody to assist me when I fall down
Right.
on the job.
No,
And
it's
the
pretty
town
broad.
attorney, if there's a conflict between, let's say,
We've hired
the
outside
select
attorneys
board
for the,
and the town manager, who would the town attorney represent?
The select board.
The select board. So there's sort of a sequence in which the town attorney represents.
Well,
Select board number 1.
the way I look at this, because there's a charter, here's my order, my pecking order in terms of how I view my job.
Yeah.
First thing is I can do nothing contrary to the charter, even if directed by the select board
Okay.
or anybody else. because it's an appointed position under the charter, I've always taken that position in towns where there are charters. Next under that is, the select board is the embodiment as the chief executive body of the town that is effectively my client in terms of who I communicate with.
Right.
Below that board, of course, is the manager, who frankly, in the practical world, is the person I most often deal with as the person who has taken her direction from the board and policy and is implementing it and telling me what to do in terms of my assignments. And then below that, of course, there are frequently interaction with department heads because it's a specific issue and there's no need to reel the manager in to deal with an issue at that level, unless sometimes there is, and then it's a joint discussion, but that's how my role works.
That's exactly the order. It's listed under legal town attorney, board, town manager, and all town departments. So it actually, even though it doesn't say priorities, that's how it's listed in that same order.
So so that can get interesting if there's some kind of intertown conflict going on.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you need to decide who you're representing.
Well, as I just said, that's who.
Yeah, I understand, I've understood that for years, but I'll tell you, the general impression of townspeople is that the town attorney represents the people in the town. And that's, but strictly speaking, that isn't quite it.
Well, it couldn't be. How
No,
could I
no,
possibly take
absolutely.
direction from
I know that.
groups? But I'll go back to where I started. The charter is what I must follow, which is adopted by the townspeople. That's my primary directive is Lost in Space computer guy said, whatever that thing was, the robot.
Robbie the robot,
Was it Robbie? All right.
I think so.
So, yes, I think it all gets back to
Right.
that with a charter. And that's another good reason for a charter, is it really does, it is a constitutional document that cannot be, from my perspective, I can't violate it.
And you do represent the town in all legal proceedings, though, and I think that's why people think you work for the townspeople, because you represent the town in all legal proceedings, as it says in the charter.
In the embodiment
You
of,
represent the town as an institution and as a.
Right, in
as
all
a
legal proceedings, yeah.
legal body, but not the people. Yeah.
I mean, I can't come to him with a
Right.
issue.
we're down in the weeds,
I
but
understand. I
the-
just wanted to clarify it.
in terms of assignments and billing and coordination, I mean, we even try to have, not have select board members independently call me, because in terms of flow, as I just described, the town manager's responsibilities as the chief administrative officer, if she's not in the loop, it gets really chaotic quickly. And most select boards follow this rule very well. Sometimes new ones don't, but they then learn quickly that they really need to go through Audra or whoever the manager is. And I take the call and then redirect them and say, next time you should do this. And it really keeps
If,
things-
however, there are issues with the town manager, then I
Then all
thought,
bets are off, then I'm back to
Okay.
just having the select board as my client. Sorry, but
Thank you.
yes, that's, and I have done that many times. Not
many.
with Audra.
No,
with other-
So,
Yeah.
going back a little bit, do you act as town attorney for any municipality that has the council, town meeting, and town manager form of government?
I do.
You
have
do?
Different, yes.
Which town is that?
Oh, you meant all three, I'm sorry.
No, that has that hybrid.
No, I have never done the hybrid, although I get it.
Okay,
I think that,
so all of your clients are town manager, town meeting, select board, not council, town meeting.
right.
That's confusing.
Uh,
Town manager.
Bill has a city council, though.
You have a city council,
It's
but
got
you don't have that
Belfast.
hybrid of council, town meeting, town manager.
Right, just the financial issues for the
Right.
town meeting and then everything else. No,
Okay.
although I do find it interesting, if you all want to go there.
That isn't, I mean, it is interesting. He's giving me a look.
Don't want to go there.
Well, it's the same evolution when, I have select boards that have no help. And I feel so bad for folks who are trying to tackle issues and they don't have the training. and the experience, because it's a small town, it's a one-off issue, and suddenly, the dirt hit the fan, and it's, what do we do now?
And they're part-time, I mean, it's.
Oh, it's totally reasonable, and it's like, man, have you all thought maybe at least a half-time person? Interesting, and the MMA materials talk a lot about small towns who do half-time or one-third time with a professional to help. So they don't hire their own town administrator or manager, they just share. But it's coming, at some point, it will likely be here.
But I've seen more and more communities that are getting away from that three-person, and getting, especially going three-person, but with an administrator or with some form of management, because they recognize they can't do what a manager has to do every day and be there and make sure things are going the way they should. And also, and then they're expanding out to 5 because it gets a better representation for the community, which I'm all for, but I'm not, I think, I like the way we run Camden. Camden has run very well for a number of years. We have a very diverse opinions, but that's what makes what we are,
I'll give one more thought, because, and this one might be a little bit more controversial, but the various economic development committees you've had over the years, if they were given an assignment from a council and given a directive and a goal and a time frame, you could process things much more quickly and efficiently with a representative form of government. It's not necessarily the best model, but in terms of getting from A to B, I'm thinking of Apollo, just in the sense of a discrete project with a specific set of goals and trying to execute on them. There is an argument, it's a fairly, I think, compelling argument, that if you're trying to get a goal done and execute on it, a representative form of elected official is going to get there more quickly, and I don't think it means less well, because I think incumbent upon those elected officials are, as council members, they're going to have to get deeper into the weeds because they are the representative of their legislative body now. And maybe you have to change compensation, and maybe you have to change the way, time allocations are for those positions. But it is viewed from the outside, businesses coming in,
It's cumbersome.
as a tool, as a mechanism, having the elected council members to get stuff done.
Front Street Shipyard very clearly states that that's what got them where they've gotten to as quickly as they've gotten, because you had a city that responded.
Right, and I've been neck deep in that for years, and absolutely, in terms of an economic driver coming and being open for the economic drivers and having the tools to get that done in a way that, judgment-wise was deemed to be the best thing. That's a really good example of a very complicated situation. We have very complicated property rights that go back and forth, and the business had all kinds of economic issues and borrowing issues and permitting issues that it would not have been possible to do that with the timeframes they had if we did not have a council form of government. So it has those advantages in terms of, for you all to think about. I'm not selling it. I'm just saying I didn't highlight this enough the first time. That's when a business is coming to a community, they absolutely are looking at those things.
But I think Camden itself is, with the office here, with Jeremy and Steve and all that, we've gone the extra mile to try to reach out to business and help guide them through. And we have CDAC, which is still called CDAC, and they've been very instrumental in helping businesses too. So, I think the community has really reached out to help as much as it can. We've changed that. Not too many years ago, people have said Camden was the worst place in the world to come do business because we were driving them out. But the other thing is too, they're not apples and oranges as far as the waterfront from Camden and the waterfront from Belfast. They had some space that was chicken and potatoes and wide open warehouses. And M&A came in and did a wonderful thing with cleaning up there. So, a lot of things happened, but they're not the same as what happened in Camden.
But our process, particularly if it takes more time.
It does.
Not whether it's a bad process in itself, it's just that it takes more time, particularly if zoning changes are required and the fact that they go through, the town meeting form
But
of
we-
government. They go through the planning board, they go through the select board, then they go to a town vote. So it's the
But we-
time frame it makes
I-
it.
But we still have the basic, all the ordinances and everything, so they know what to expect to do to get to
Right.
point A and B. So, I
Can't
mean,
react as
They
quickly.
had,
Yeah.
they had a lot of time-sensitive things that happened along the way, where they would go to the council, and council would be, okay, we're holding a special meeting on such and such a day, and we're deciding that.
oh, I understand, and it's a wonderful facility. I think they did a great job in Belfast. I commend them for what they did, but I don't know if that would ever work here. I mean, God,
I
you'd,
think taking more time can be an advantage to a small community.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying,
Throwing that in, you know. it's
Absolutely.
not what is a disadvantage some places can be an advantage when you're small. And they have to take a lot of time, and people get to know who they are and
look what we went through
who
for
they are
the,
not.
the harbor thing. How many meetings was that? And
Oh, you don't mean
the,
wave,
not Wayfair, the discussion on the public landings back when they did that group. I can't even remember the name of the company.
Oh,
We had the-
TY Land when
Yeah,
they
we
did
had the
the,
meetings in the mill, we had the meetings at the school. I mean, there were 50 to 100 people at them, and they were just,
came up with,
took a long time, but it,
we have the guidelines
Yeah.
as a result. That's all my question.
So my point.
sorry, I got into the weeds.
And my point wasn't that it's good or bad, my point was how it's perceived from the outside. Whether you're business friendly or not, and what's the process. You don't even know, you don't know the stuff that hasn't happened because of the perception.
I
And
understand.
it's not the nature of Camden, it's just the nature of the legislative process being not nimble. And that's a plus to, and the argument on the other side is maybe we just want to know who we're dealing with, and
If
we
you're
want to take
small,
more time.
It can be a good thing.
But also you have missed opportunities, so I don't have a good answer, I'm just throwing it out there for you guys to
Well, we have to
think
think
about.
about it. We do have to think about it. We have to realize what else is out there and how other people operate. We don't want to do this in a vacuum. It's why we want to read other charters and see how other people handle it.
So that's the end of my stuff, unless you had other questions. I'm sorry I took so long.
No, I
I
think
have an operational question. We went around and around and around in our last meeting, having conversations on what we can do as this group as far as what constitutes public information, public meeting. Can three of us be a subcommittee to go meet with somebody, or does that create a public meeting that we then haven't put a notice in the newspaper that three of us are going to meet with, I don't know, the town manager of Lincolnville or something? Can three of us do that and not have to put it as a public meeting in the newspaper when we're on a fact-finding mission? So we had a lot of conversation about that and public right to know and what we're doing as we go through. So our next item is looking at operational options, dividing the articles and assigning to individuals or groups, collectively reviewing articles. What can we and can we not do?
I don't think the state statute says.
Well, it's elected body, though, that's the thing.
Well,
right?
yeah, you have to do everything in terms of your business here. It is true, though, that the very nature of this, what you're doing, requires the gathering of information, and perhaps a significant amount of information. I guess I'll have to think, why would it have to be three people?
Well, you can't have three select board members and it's considered a meeting.
No, right, but that's about, three is a quorum.
Right.
How many are we missing?
9.
There's 9?
So you're saying the quorum is
So
5?
That's based on, it has to be under a quorum, is that what you're?
Then it's not
Is
an
that where the
official
three-
meeting if it's under a
I thought
quorum.
3 was the number, I didn't realize 3 as being a function of a quorum.
I think that probably the same rules apply in the sense that if you are, and it would be hard for three of you to do this, if you're deliberating, that's a big no-no.
Right.
Deliberating means you're having a discussion about the pros and cons, moving towards a conclusion. That has to be done in public. But in terms of your information gathering, I think if you were clear and transparent in a sense to say, here are the assignments, you're going to go visit so-and-so and get some information and come and report back to us, or write a note up or something, and you delegate some responsibilities to go do that. I'm not so sure, that certainly doesn't feel to me like it's violating the Title I, the right to know statute that requires the public's business to be done in public. It's not a hearing in the sense that you've got somebody's property rights before you, so that only the information that is heard by everyone can be considered, and it's a big no-no to go do independent investigation. You cannot do that when somebody's property rights are before you, but that's not this board. So I don't feel, thinking about this, just thinking out loud, I don't see why that is a problem as long as there's some kind of identification of assignments as to who goes where and what the scope of what you're going to do is, and then report back.
And then it's reported back in a public meeting.
Sure.
So that's
Who's
transparent.
keeping the records of our meetings now?
We're
They're
being,
being recorded?
Internet in the sky.
Yes.
And are they going to be transcribed by someone for anybody in the public who wants to read it?
they can go on
We've got the
watch
minutes
it.
right
Watch
here
it
from
on
the last
YouTube.
meeting.
YouTube, yeah.
It's open to the public.
He has to email.
I didn't get an email.
It
So
was
there's
the
not
email,
a
because it was the same email
requirement that there
that
be
was.
written notes produced? The
Reporting is satisfactory.
He asked me for the minutes, no.
You can do an outline. Some different, different boards do different things. You're going to be going through a lot of material. You can decide how we wish to memorialize it.
because the select board needs to have produced minutes, right?
We did have minutes produced from the first meeting. I just guess I'm the only one
I
that
did
didn't
those,
see it.
but I probably, I'm sorry, that's gonna be the last time I do the
You
minutes.
shouldn't have to do the minutes.
It took me a long time.
You should not have to do
No,
that.
I don't
That's
think
not your
that's,
role.
no, I don't think so. I
I
agree.
encourage you to do minutes if you can do an outline, even if it's an uncomplicated one.
But somebody could do the minutes from the tape, or the CD, or whatever it is.
Who does the select board's minutes?
Jeannie, right? No.
Kendall.
Kendall, yeah.
Is that a resource we can tap into?
I think you're gonna have to speak to the select board about that.
You have to find funds for that. We only have,
Actually, we
we
have
only
funds.
have $100.
So when we
To
discussed
start.
last time that we were going to the town was going to supply someone to do record keeping, then the decision was made that it would be taped, and that would be it? I
I'd say
thought
you
that
need to
somebody was
discuss
gonna
with
do
the
minutes.
select board who's gonna do minutes.
Need to make a formal request if we want to hire somebody, because we don't have funds to hire them. We don't hire somebody. We only have
Why
$100.
isn't the recording good enough? Why would we want to replicate?
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine.
Because you can always go back to it. I mean,
We don't need minutes.
I think the recording is good enough.
How would somebody take minutes of this meeting today?
It takes you about twice
I
as
mean,
long
it's,
as the actual meeting, so.
where you're making motions and this is really more or less a discussion. I don't know how we didn't act other than to say the meeting began. Okay,
we should record the motions, though, when we do that.
right,
It
yeah,
does need to
yeah.
be recorded, but I think, if I were to make notes, I would say, Bill Kelly made a presentation discussing the three forms of town government. I mean, you use the agenda and you flesh out the agenda as long as you're not deliberating and making decisions and voting on something. Then those things need to be recorded, what the motion is verbatim and the vote, salient points. In some meetings, we've just said, and they're pursued, and then they pursued a discussion.
Correct.
So my thought is that if we're making a vote on something, that needs to be officially recorded.
Not just
In writing.
procedure, not just sort of our own procedural stuff. It would have to be something like changing the charter,
Yeah.
the charters.
Content.
I don't mind, since I am kind of the secretary, I don't see that as sort of the secretary.
Oh, no wonder you.
But I don't mind. I'm pretty good at taking notes and dictating and having my staff back at the office type stuff up. So if it comes to needing to make some kind of written record, I don't mind.
As a person interested in how decisions get made, and I go back and research sometimes how they get made, the fact that today, even as we had your presentation, there were certain topics that it was obvious we all were, or most of us were a little more interested in, asked more questions about, and talk back and forth about. And to me, it'd be interesting to have those mentioned because of the fact that it is an important document. And then one would have a context of how we arrived.
What I kind of think, as Admiral was saying, it's pretty painful to go back and try to recreate minutes in writing. My view is that this is all publicly accessible. I know it's maybe a little bit more awkward for you, because I'm not sure how much you rely on computers.
I know, I do rely on computers.
Right,
I
but
just don't have the internet coming in my house. I perfectly well know how to use it. I do.
That's more a transcript.
But I like to have
We're talking
written
But I think-
minutes of things.
I think we probably, as a board, need to, but not as a board, as a commission, we should probably should decide how we want to record things. For me, I'm comfortable just having it be audio recorded, video recorded. I think that's the best possible. If I was doing a deposition or something and had a video recording of it, that's sort of good enough for all purposes.
So other than going online and seeing YouTube, can they come to the town office and pick up a CD if they want to play back? It used to be, I don't know if it's still there or not.
We don't, well, I mean, we don't really do that anymore. I guess you could, theoretically.
Well, I'm just saying, if somebody wanted to take a CD home and look it up, see how a decision was made, I suppose. I
Download
do-
it on their
I
computer
know,
and put
I
it on
know,
a stick.
I know. You're correct, that's true.
Just those discs are, they're like floppy disks. They're not doing them
I
so
remember
much
those.
anymore.
But I agree with Chris, I understand where you're going, but I agree with Chris. I mean, this conversation has all been everywhere. It'd be very hard to follow it and do it justice, I think, because of everything's been said.
When we get to the point that we're making actual sort of binding votes of the commission
Recommendations.
to narrow the focus or to sort of go with one form of government or something like that, I think then we'd probably want to have that in writing, so there's something that people can look at. And I'd be happy to take those kinds of minutes if the chair wanted that.
I think that's great because you have all those years of experience on the planning board about motions and, writing those motions properly and getting them specifically done. So that would be very helpful.
It seems to take care of it, though. It's-
Shall we have a motion about that, an official way that we're going to handle this? Should that be something we vote on, or can that just be done by consensus?
Could do it either way. I would suggest to add to your thought, Chris, that clarity, there should be some clarity when assignments are given, if people are
Yes.
going to go off and do something. I think that should be reduced to a writing for everybody's sake, so people know exactly what their assignment is, and that it can be
Right.
reproduced, because it gets a little too loose if people are going off willy-nilly without a written assignment, or a motion of some sort to go do some research.
And then the research that people do and bring back to the group, is it appropriate for that all to be archived someplace also as part of the record of the group?
For me, I think that would be the general video or audio recording. That would be,
But I
I mean,
think,
the
the
research.
written documentation, for instance, I'd make notes about whatever I did if I went interviewed somebody, and I'd write that up, and that would become part of our official record.
Part of the file in the town, yeah.
Absolutely.
Where are we on this agenda?
That's a good question.
What do we got left on this agenda? What do we got left on
Some
this
kind of
agenda?
do you have a site set aside on the website yet?
I think we're going to deal with tonight.
Place people go to see what's
We're gonna
going on with
just-
the commission here?
Well, I
Time's
mean,
up, time's up.
not really. We'd have a YouTube
Thanks,
channel
Steve.
and you can go and
Thank you.
find all the,
Could there be a place for
oh, you mean like,
PDF stuffs to be,
oh,
for
yeah,
anybody
absolutely.
wanted to go see
Yep,
it? Like
we can do that.
the list of the commission members and.
Yep.
Sample charters and
Oh, yeah,
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 so
we can do that. We do that
statute
with
and
other committees.
This is on the webpage too, whatever it is there? Or a reference to it, wherever it can be found?
We can create one.
Is it a big deal?
Nope.
Because I don't,
So minutes are going to consist of clarified assignments of what we're doing and official motions or recommendations towards the board. That's what we're going to include in minutes.
In written.
In written minutes, we're not going to worry about transcripts of conversations.
The official record shall be the recording,
Right.
and then clarified written assignments, motion and votes, and then with a note that any research by commission members shall also be archived as part of the official record.
Perhaps
Do you-
one thing would be a roll
Do,
call,
Oh, and a roll call.
so
And-
you know who the quorum is and what, then when you have a vote, you know how many people
Okay.
are voting.
so where are we right now? I'm not quite following this whole thing here. Are we in a position where we're going to make a motion that says Chris is going to take care of the recording of votes on specific issues, and that the audio, video version will be the official record?
Yep. And that research for any subgroups will be,
And,
written notes will be
and,
handed
and
out.
it would be a good thing to have a motion to that effect and vote on it?
Yes.
I'll second your motion, Steve.
Okay. Do you have the motion?
And roll call.
Okay.
roll
Is there
call,
any
sorry.
discussion?
And roll call of each meeting, yeah, attendance.
Any discussion?
I think it should, what I understand the motion to be is that there'll be sort of some regular minutes in the form that Audra put together for the last meeting that indicates what time the meeting started, who was present, the basic things we just talked about being included in the minutes, and then an adjournment at the end. So it'll contain a regular format, it's just not going to contain all of the discussions that took place within the meeting itself, I think is what I understand.
Second.
So all in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed?
I
Motion
forgot-
carried.
I forgot you did that.
Yeah, I don't- what-
Let's have it.
I think what we need to do now is two things. I think we ought to, and perhaps right now, decide when our next meeting's going to be. And then before we're done, myself, I would like meetings to last no more than 2 hours. So that we start at 6:30. I'd like to adjourn at 8:30. So I think we ought to do some future planning. I also think Bill started right at the meeting with saying he looked down at the agenda and he didn't know of any good way of approaching this. And in other words, I'm talking about process now. What are we going to do? We ought to have a discussion about that, how we're going to do it before we try to get to specifics. How are we going to do it? So why don't we deal with that first? If you look at number 7, Deb and I came up with those two things: divide and assign to individuals or groups the articles, or collectively review each article or groups of articles. Is there any other, Bill, do you have any suggestions?
Well, maybe it's a function of just having to deal with so many communities, but I like sort of the plod through by section, start at the beginning and move through it kind of thing, but I think it can get, I've seen other communities divide and conquer, and that worked well as well, in terms of not doing a plodding through A, B, C, D, E, but you three do A, B, C, you three, but I don't know, I guess it depends on sort of how y'all want to function, and
We could
Strengths.
try, we could try it one way, and, in a little while, if we go, ooh, this has gotten so cumbersome, because 9 people are all trying to talk about the same sentence, and that could take 532 hours. So we could try it that way and see how we go through a portion of it and see if it's working for us. I mean, that's one way.
Which way are you proposing?
Well, either way, I mean.
Start at the beginning and
do-
go
do
through it.
As the whole group, and maybe till we get kind of the hang of what we're doing, and then maybe split it up if we feel comfortable doing that, or if it's taking too long.
I
I
have
like
a
Bill's
sneaking,
suggestion, because that way we all become familiar with the material too.
Right.
I have
Sure.
a sneaking suspicion that none of these will be like walk in here and fix it. So if we come in and we have a conversation and we're all asking a lot of questions, then we're gonna come up with those questions and say, okay, here's where we can go answer those questions, you, and you.
Okay.
We'll research it. So if we start out saying,
We all
okay, we're gonna
review.
start looking at these 3 sections and let's see where we go.
Lots of
Does it say anything in the section that says now if we have 9 months from today, correct? To come up with a,
With an extension.
well, I'm just saying, for present, it's saying 9 months. What happens in between? I mean, as we go through sections, we're gonna want to probably stop somewhere and have a public hearing and at least so we're not doing the whole thing at once. And then plus you have to review it to make sure that we're going down the right path, correct? Or somebody.
Well, yeah. Within 30 days after the organizational meeting, she'll have a public hearing, and that's
Public
today.
meeting, that's today's
Yeah,
public.
public meeting.
Public right here.
Yes.
Public over my
Mark
shoulder.
is our
To hold
token,
its hearings at 10 days before hearing.
Mark is our token person, public tonight.
Okay.
There's not a lot of guidance between today and the 9-month period. It just,
Yeah.
it just gets into saying what you got to do within 9 months.
I would like to make a comment here, that I like the idea of starting at the beginning and working through. But I also would like to put a request out that the specific things that our select people or our town manager have that they already know about, section whatever, point whatever, they already know is an issue. That should be presented to us by them,
Right away.
right away.
It's under number 6.
Yeah.
Okay, issues which are, well, C, select board and town manager issues.
Right.
What issues they have for
I
us?
mean, I can't give you that today. We
I know,
Expect it today.
You could do that, I mean, we could say that on the next
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
Maybe Audra's the first person on the agenda, and she gives us those things that she's concerned about, and we won't have to deal with them all that night, because maybe one of them's the last 2 sections in the charter, and we'll deal with it, but we'll know in advance that we're gonna need to deal with that.
Well, if we divide this up into some kind of schedule, the sections, thinking of our 9 months, and then we have, an agenda of how we're gonna handle each thing and when, then the suggestions can be submitted before we attack that section. So we
Okay.
have them. Do you see what I mean? By
yeah.
anybody who wants to have input in the town to those sections.
Okay, what if, since we're struggling, why don't we just say, for the next meeting, we're going to get input as from the select board and from town manager as to what they see as problems and where they need help. However, that we're going to deal with Article 1 and Article 2, that everybody should review those 2 articles, come up with what you, changes or additions or problems or questions, and then let's start by dealing with it. And then, as you suggested, we might want to go elsewhere. We might want to do it a different way. But we need to get started, and why don't we do the simplest thing and start that way? Anybody have any problems with that?
Sounds good.
Yes, we do Articles 1 through 3, though, because the select board and the town manager, I think there's an awful lot of connection there. If we separate them, that might make it.
Plus,
1
there's
through
9
3.
sections and 9 articles.
I don't
We could do-
anticipate us changing every word in this thing anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
it is gonna
Are
be
we
just,
gonna all get the town manager information that you had? That'll go to Janice and get sent out to everybody?
Or it's going to be, the PDF is going to be put up on
So I
the
could
web.
Send the statutes, and then anybody could add one. I have a couple town manager, town meeting, which is what you have now, models, and I also had one, just for fun, John, on council manager town meeting models, which is the hybrid from Herman, and you had another one you might want. I will PDF all
What if those
three.
were put in the town office in a binder? And that way, any of us that wanted to see it could go in and look at it there, and it'd all be in one central place for us?
Sure.
And If we wanted copies of it, we could get them made.
I'll PDF them all to Janice, so they can be sent to you, and then, sure, print off and have a notebook here as well. And there's nothing sacred about these. I like got dizzy looking at various models today. There's a lot of them out there. But perhaps following Steve's comment is you only be really focused on those first three sections in each of these and see which ones you like.
Are they all organized in the same way?
Similar.
Article 1 is the powers of the town, and
Very similar.
Almost all of them are
3
that way.
is usually the town manager.
Maybe not always, but you get the section that says town manager.
Right.
But you'll definitely have apples to apples. They might not be 1, 2, 3. See what you like.
Another way of looking at some of them, and maybe we want to do it at some point, is some of them are formatted, it's the way they're presented, are presented differently when you look at them. When I went through links at the MMA site, for instance, Bar Harbor, I think Bar Harbor and Biddeford have very similar format, as if the same company, whatever, took the charter and put it in a form, and they're really interesting. It's a nice-looking form. It's just the format. I'm not talking about the content. I'm talking about how it's formatted and how it's presented.
That
and
Bar Harbor and where?
Bar Harbor and Biddeford, they're very similar. And then Ogunquit has a very clean format. It's not quite as forward as far as looking like an internet format or a computer format, but Ogunquit has another nice, clean presentation of its charter. So we do need to be thinking about how we're going to present it, but those are, Bar Harbor and Ogunquit are two to look at.
Well-
Look a little more updated.
On the topics, I hate to bring to, it's not a little divergence, but not a lot of one. I think I have a, your charter requires that there be a codification or codification of all of your ordinances, and it would be called the Camden Code, I think it says. And that has never occurred in terms of there being a central code. And what you are talking about is what happens after you create the central code. In doing that, you find that what these companies that do this professionally then turn it into this document that is fairly, I guess, user-friendly in a computer model. You can search, you click the box as to which
Yeah.
sections you want printed. It's almost like shopping. And you don't get the whole thing printed out, you get the sections you want printed out. But that is a very expensive endeavor. And so my point is, at some point, you're going to have to decide, do you want to do what your last charter said, which is require codification? It has some statutory implications, but it's a big old book, it's expensive, they make you pay to do
So
it.
what is expensive? Any idea?
How expensive?
Yeah,
$10,000?
No,
More?
yeah.
more than
Oh.
10,000?
So that's what Bar Harbor and Biddeford have done? Is that one of those companies?
What I was hearing.
You got
say
good
is a
taste.
Like a template or a format. So tell me what codification
What I'm
is.
saying is they have
We'll have to
taken
get
all
select
their
board to open up their
ordinances,
wallet.
and they've sequentially documented them.
Planning
They've
ordinances,
created code of
everything.
Problem, you start doing that.
Rockland has a city code. It's
Yeah.
one document.
Right.
And you just type in what you want, it all looks the same. It doesn't have the way we have ordinances that look, pieces and bits and
And
pieces.
also, you don't have people just sticking stuff here, like, oh, it's a miscellaneous ordinance, oh, okay.
And you're talking
There we
well
go.
beyond the charter. You were
It's
talking.
a document that doesn't end, in other
I'm talking about the
words.
appearance and formatting
It
of the
is.
charter.
It's
He's
just
talking about
very
what
well
we-
organized.
Right, but you keep adding to
But
it.
that,
You
you
don't,
pay for that, that's the
Yeah.
thing. You get that appearance. when
it's
you buy
a
the whole
perpetual
package.
thing, not a,
Done professionally.
so
So that's
what
next
you,
step.
what you do
But
to,
it's in here.
yeah, but you, it's,
It requires you to have one right now.
it's almost like a diary where it keeps,
Well,
you
when we
just
get
keep
to that
adding
section,
to it.
But it's-
What happened 20 years ago is still in there,
As we
but
come
you'd have to
this
go back and
meeting
look
when
at
we
it.
get to
Yeah.
And what you do today is not necessarily what,
How do we know?
There's like 3
There's
columns.
too many
$multi-million
conversations.
We're going to have one meeting, okay? And we ought to move right along. We only have 15 more minutes, okay? And where are we right now?
Can I just re-ask that question?
Yes.
Because what Bill just said was, where were we? On, on codification. Our charter says we need to codify everything and have this big humongous document. We haven't done that. My question is that statute or is that just our our charter. I'm gathering that that's our charter saying that and not the statute. But as we go through this process, how do we know those things? We can look at that and it's in here and says we have to do that.
But we don't know if it's state statute that's requiring it or whether it's the town that's deciding.
At this point, though, it's in the charter, we have to do that until it's changed, right?
Right, and it costs
That's a good
lots of money
question.
and it's a whole thing we've never done.
There is a statute on codification, and it has certain implications. It creates a presumptively admissible document in court and a couple other little bells and whistles, nothing really that compelling.
But I'm just using that as an example. There's an example of something that we're saying is in the charter. I don't know whether it's charter or statute.
I'll get you the statute on that, too. So, well, seriously.
The question's more general.
But my point is more general than that. If we were looking at this and we thought, well, that's dumb, that's gonna cost $100,000 and we don't wanna do that, can we pitch that? We don't know, because we have to know, is it in the statute or not?
And that's why I'll get you the statute, and we'll see
But
what
I'm
the
not-
language says.
I'm not really just talking about that
I'm
one
missing
thing. You are. I'm way more general. Anything we come
Anything we come
across.
across.
Right,
That's one example of something that's right there that we, and how we might handle it, but that could happen in any one of these thousands of lines.
It'd be really
that are in
nice
here.
if the
Yes.
copy we were working from had like stuff in bold that was actually coming from state law.
This is-
Couldn't be changed.
This is statute.
Everything else could be changed if we could
Right.
somehow.
But the
bring-
things where we have references, I mean, I'm wondering where this charter references, sometimes after a paragraph, state law reference. It says Article 3, general reference, 30 MRSA, which is, of course, 30-A, and so they don't apply anymore. But where state law is referenced, maybe it's, I shouldn't assume that those are the things that are required by law, and the other ones are the things that were put in by the town.
Yeah.
I mean, so we have some indications that some of these
And-
things
and
we
is
can't
that a
willy-nilly
hotline?
change.
Right, and is that a hotline? I'm just wondering how our process, that's all.
I think we'll
There's-
have-
so, okay, back to your big picture question. Yes, you can jettison anything you want. Because if the state statute says it's got to be done that way, it's got to happen anyway. And there are a lot of municipalities that have no charter. So,
We don't want
yes.
to waste our time on stuff that, debating stuff that's going to be required by statute anyway.
Can the Maine Municipal Association give us guidance on this?
Well, they don't have it, that's why there's like, 140 towns with 128 charters, 12 of them got together and copied the same thing, but the rest, they're all independently tailored. So they don't tell you what to put in, they'll tell you whether it's illegal when you share it with them, but there's not that I'm aware of, a sample template here, get this loaf of bread.
If you look at the difference between Maine and New Hampshire has enabling legislation. You can't do anything unless the state has said you can do it. So if you want to change the names on your streets of your town, you can't do it unless the state has said you can change the street names in your town. In Maine, it's the other way around. You can do pretty much anything you want as long as they haven't said you can't do it. So it's the exact reverse, which opens up to 140 different town charters and.
I think if we run into something and we question whether we can take it out or not, we make a list of those questions and say, these are the questions that we ask the town attorney to answer for us.
Sure.
And you remember, in the end, we have to have an attorney,
Right.
not Bill, go over it. And
uh,
if we've made a mistake along the way, then hopefully, then we'll be told that and we'll correct it. And I think we ought to cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's see what happens. Let's get into this thing and then see how we deal with it.
So our
Well,
next,
I'd like to just volunteer, since we haven't brought up the gender neutrality, which is on the agenda. As we go through it, I'd be glad to take care of that. Everyone else can approve it, but I've already researched quite a few.
so when you say you want to take care of it, are you going to do it in a Word document, or you're just going to mark every place where you need to fix it?
I'm going to mark it with the suggested fixes in this that we have, and then as we rewrite it, advise you about that too. I'd be glad to do that.
Do you have it in a Word document format, and you're going to redline it?
Do I what?
Do you have it in a computer, Word, they call it Word, which would be on the computer in a format that is amendable? You can type into it, you can write over it. Let me say it this way. Seemingly, as we move along, we should have a document, and there are red lines that go on that document, so everybody can see what's
Well,
changed.
I wouldn't be the one keeping track of that, but I would let people, work on the gender neutral language that we should have in here.
Somebody's going to have to type that into a document at some point in time.
Right.
Well, when we get to that point, we'll have to hit the select board up for some money, right? And some staff.
Okay, yeah.
We'll make them open their wallets.
It seems like there should be some money to pay somebody in the town to do that.
Example of the neutral administrator. Yes, I
I
guess.
didn't want to put it all on Audra.
She's not going to do the typing. I mean,
No, I didn't say that.
I did it for the comprehensive plan, but that's 3 years ago, and I'm not a Word person, I'm an Excel person.
Is the document that we have as the PDF or whatever writable? Can we make it writable?
There's a Word document.
Is there a Word document of it? Okay,
So it can be.
so it can be.
We can pull it up on our computers.
We don't want 9 people pulling up a Word document and making changes.
We'd have some red lines on that.
No,
Oh, no.
no.
Or will one
One
person pull it?
person, only one person can do that. And it has to be on a computer that's compatible, I think, with the town computer. Having gone through this with the new comprehensive plan, I have a Macintosh, the planning board had a PC, Jeannie had a PC. I would send changes to Larry, Larry would open it up in his PC, formatting would change. I mean, so there are all those kinds of, you have to be really careful how you do this, is what I'm saying. Things can get
Let's
lost.
go through the next one and see what it looks like after we start going through.
Yeah, let's get moving forward.
So our next meeting is going to be Articles 1, 2, and 3. I mean, that's our homework, and we're requesting Audra come with her list of suggestions or issues.
1, 2, and 3.
Are we, and the select board's list, or is Audra enough for one
I think
meeting?
Audra could do it. Got all kinds of faith in
Well,
her.
we do have a liaison here from the select board. I assume that's what you're here, or are you just part of the public?
I'm just public, we have no we decided to do no liaison.
Didn't think we were important enough.
Well, evidently, yeah.
I'm just here because I wanted to be here.
So are we gonna get the concerns of the select board and Audra before the next meeting?
That's the- I don't know
Or
if we
at the
have,
meeting?
do we have time to get them before our meeting, or will you come present them at the meeting? What works best?
When's the meeting?
That's the next question.
Well, that, we have to get to that. And I think if you look at what the agenda will be next time, will be the 6C and Articles 1, 2, and 3. And then, is there anything else that I've missed there?
What's the date of the next meeting?
Well, that's where we're gonna go next,
Did you
okay?
say
Can
6?
we, Steve, can we, can we do 5:30? I'll do 5:30. It's harder, but
It's up to the group.
was that, anybody want to do 5:30? You do 5:30?
Am I, did you want me to show up?
What day, is there a bad day for you,
For the
Chris?
next one?
Mondays are a good time.
Or is everyone?
You need to for the next
I think probably until they've gotten a little
We have,
further into it.
Janice
list of questions.
told us Monday was good for this meeting, so maybe we could keep Mondays.
We'll try.
It's up to the group. I'm pretty flexible, as long as I know in advance.
Yeah, I'm flexible. Is Monday a good day for everybody?
No Fridays, forget Fridays.
Okay, so no Friday. So it'll be on a Monday.
No Tuesday, no
Now,
Wednesday.
take a look at your calendars.
About
Okay.
2 weeks.
23rd or the 30th?
The 23rd, I'm going to be away,
23rd
so,
is, yeah.
but the 30th, I'll be here.
Shoot for the 30th?
Okay, it's the 30th.
Say 5:30?
Yeah.
5:30 on the 30th.
Shall one of us check with Janice, see if the room's available?
I can check with Janice.
And I think we ought to shoot for having a meeting go no more than 2 hours.
I agree.
We can,
Okay. And right now, we could beat that by 5 minutes. If I entertain a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
done.
Steve, I just needed clarification. I was getting my calendar. We're doing Articles 1, 2, and 3 in Audra next meeting. You said
Audrey,
something
yeah, well, okay.